At the beginning of life, dreams are born without permission, without fear, without limits, because innocence does not understand boundaries yet. A child does not calculate failure, does not measure odds, does not ask whether the world will approve. At that stage, imagination is pure energy, untrained but powerful, reckless but honest. A 10-year-old believes they can be anything because no one has yet convinced them otherwise. They speak their dreams out loud without embarrassment, without apology, without shrinking their voice. They run toward ideas the way they run toward open fields, with full speed and no hesitation, because innocence has not learned caution. Innocence does not know what is practical. Innocence only knows what feels possible, but the world does not celebrate innocence for long. Slowly, subtly, it begins to teach fear, not always through cruelty, but through correction. Someone says, be careful. Someone says that's unrealistic. Someone says, people like us don't do things like that. Fear doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives whispering, dressed as advice, disguised as concern, wrapped in the language of protection. And the mind that once created freely starts to hesitate. The same imagination that once built entire futures begins to ask questions it never asked before. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if they laugh? What if I waste time? Fear is not taught in one moment. It is layered over years. It shows up in classrooms where answers matter more than curiosity. It shows up in homes where survival feels more urgent than dreams. It shows up in systems that reward obedience more than originality. And slowly, innocence starts to trade boldness for safety. Dreams that once felt natural begin to feel dangerous. Wanting more begins to feel selfish. Standing out begins to feel risky. The tragedy is not that fear exists. The tragedy is that fear arrives before self-belief is strong enough to defend itself, before discipline is developed, before identity is solid. Innocence has power, but it has no armor. So when fear challenges it, innocence retreats, not because it was weak, but because it was unprepared. And most people never realize the moment it happens. They don't notice the exact day they stop dreaming big. They don't remember the exact comment that made them doubt themselves. They only feel the result years later when they look at their life and sense something missing. Fear teaches people to lower expectations instead of raising standards. It teaches them to blend in instead of stand tall. It convinces them that safety is success and comfort is achievement. And over time, dreams don't disappear. They shrink. They become smaller, quieter, more acceptable. They move from being spoken out loud to being kept inside, then from being kept inside to being postponed, then from postponed to forgotten. Yet deep inside, the original dream never fully dies. It waits, it watches, it remembers what it felt like to believe without proof. That childhood belief was not foolish, it was honest. It wasn't ignorant, it was free. And the real battle of life is not about creating new dreams, but about reclaiming the courage that once allowed dreams to exist without fear. Because innocence didn't fail. Innocence was interrupted. And the people who change their lives later are not the ones who suddenly become talented, but the ones who learn to protect their dreams the way they should have been protected all along. The ones who stop asking the world for permission. The ones who remember that before fear taught them limits, they already knew how to imagine a life bigger than their circumstances, bigger than their environment, bigger than the opinions of others, bigger than the version of themselves they were told to accept, bigger than the fear that tried to replace belief before belief had a chance to grow. Belief is the first battlefield of every human life, long before talent is questioned, long before. Our skill is measured long before results are demanded. Ability can stay hidden for years, untouched, undiscovered, unused, but belief is challenged almost immediately. Before the world ever asks what you can do, it asks whether you think you can do it. And most people lose the war right there, silently, internally, without anyone noticing. They don't fail publicly. They surrender privately. They don't collapse on the stage. They collapse in their own minds. From an early age, belief is tested by voices that sound confident. Teachers, relatives, friends, systems, traditions, all speaking with authority, all shaping perception. Not necessarily with bad intentions, but with limited vision. A child shows curiosity and is told to stay focused. A child shows creativity and is told to be practical. A child asks questions and is told not to question too much. And slowly, belief begins to bend. Not because the child lacks ability, but because belief is still fragile. Ability can wait. Belief cannot. Belief must survive early pressure or ability will never get its chance. The cruel irony of life is that the world rarely attacks your strengths directly. It attacks attacks your confidence in them. It doesn't say you are incapable. It says you might not make it. It says others are better. It says the odds are low. It says success is rare. It introduces statistics, comparisons, and caution, not to educate you, but to intimidate you. And belief, if not protected, begins to retreat. Once belief retreats, ability follows it into hiding. History is full of people whose ability was never in question, but whose belief was. Brilliant minds that stayed silent, gifted individuals who never stepped forward, potential that died untouched because belief was never strong enough to demand expression. For every Edison who persisted, there were thousands who stopped experimenting. For every Lincoln who stood back up, there were countless others who accepted defeat as identity, not because they lacked strength, but because belief was exhausted before ability was ever fully tested. Belief is attacked early because belief is dangerous. A person who believes will try. A person who tries will fail. A person who fails will learn. A person who learns will adapt. And a person who adapts becomes unstoppable. So the system prefers doubt. Doubt keeps people obedient. Doubt keeps them small. Doubt keeps them waiting for permission. A doubting mind asks for approval before action. A believing mind moves before consensus. Ability develops in action, not in comfort. But belief must exist before action begins. You don't become confident by winning. You win by acting before confidence arrives. That is why belief is targeted so early. If belief can be weakened, action never happens. If action never happens, ability remains theoretical, and theoretical potential is harmless. It threatens no one. People often misunderstand confidence. They think confidence comes from evidence. In reality, evidence comes from confidence. Every expert was once inexperienced. Every master was once awkward. Every legend was once doubted. The difference was not ability. It was belief strong enough to survive embarrassment, criticism, delay, and rejection. Belief is also attacked through time. You are told you are too young. Then you are told you are too late. At every stage, belief is challenged by age, by timing, by circumstance. The message changes, but the goal stays the same. Hesitation. Wait longer. Be safer. Choose certainty over possibility. And while you wait, fear grows stronger. Fear does not need proof. Fear only needs imagination. It paints futures that haven't happened and convinces you they are inevitable. And without belief to challenge it, fear becomes leadership. It starts making decisions for you. It chooses your career, your relationships, your risks. It convinces you that avoiding pain is smarter than pursuing purpose. The most painful part is that belief is often attacked by people who love you. Parents who want security, friends who want comfort, communities that fear change. They are not villains, but they are carriers of limitation. They pass down what they were taught. And if you are not careful, you inherit their fears along with their advice. Ability does not argue. Ability does not defend itself. Ability waits. It waits for belief to call it forward. But when belief is damaged early, ability never hears the call. It stays dormant. And years later, people say they never had the talent, never had the chance, never had the opportunity, when in truth, they never protected belief long enough to let ability speak. This is why rebuilding belief later in life feels so hard. You are not just fighting current doubt. You are fighting years of conditioning, years of being told what is realistic, years of watching others quit, years of seeing effort unrewarded. But belief is not fragile by nature. It only becomes fragile when it is unsupported. The people who break through are not the most gifted, but the most stubborn about belief. They decide that doubt does not get the final word. They accept fear as noise, not instruction. They act while uncertain. They move while unready. They test ability in the real world instead of judging it in their head, because ability cannot reveal itself in imagination alone. It needs resistance. It needs failure. It needs pressure. And belief is what allows a person to stay long enough in the process for ability to emerge. When belief survives the early attacks, ability eventually demands recognition. The real tragedy is not failing after trying. The real tragedy is never trying, because belief was killed before ability had a chance to breathe. And the real awakening in life comes when a person realizes that most of their limits were installed before they ever tested their true capacity, when they understand that belief was attacked early, not because they were weak, but because what they carried had the potential to disrupt comfort, to challenge norms, to exceed expectations. And once belief is reclaimed, ability finally steps forward, ready to prove that the doubt was never truth, only noise. Discipline is the dividing line between those who dream and those who build, between those who talk and those who transform, between those who who start and those who finish. Motivation feels powerful, but it is unstable. It rises with emotion and collapses with discomfort. It shows up when the music is loud, when the words are inspiring, when the vision feels fresh. But the moment resistance appears, motivation negotiates. It looks for excuses. It asks for better conditions. It waits for the right mood. Discipline does not ask. Discipline moves. Life is not designed to reward how you feel. It responds to what you do repeatedly. The body does not change because you are inspired. It changes because you show up when you are tired. Skill does not grow because you believe in yourself. It grows because you practice when progress feels invisible. Success does not come because you want it badly. It comes because you do the boring, uncomfortable, repetitive work long after the excitement fades. Motivation is external. Discipline is internal. Motivation needs a trigger. Discipline is a decision. Motivation depends on energy. Discipline creates energy. Motivation looks for intensity. Discipline relies on consistency, and consistency always outperforms intensity over time. A single emotional push can start a journey, but only disciplined habits can carry it forward. Most people misunderstand why they keep starting and stopping. They blame lack of talent. They blame lack of opportunity. They blame lack of resources. Rarely do they admit the truth. They relied on motivation for a job that requires discipline. They waited to feel ready instead of training themselves to act regardless of emotion. They expected the road to feel good instead of expecting resistance as part of the process. Disciple. Idea is uncomfortable because it exposes the gap between who you are and who you say you want to be. Every disciplined action is a mirror. It forces honesty. It removes the comfort of excuses. It demands accountability. That is why most people avoid it. Discipline does not care about your story. It does not sympathize with your past. It only responds to your behavior. The people who rise early, train daily, study relentlessly, and execute consistently are not superhuman. They simply stopped negotiating with themselves. They decided that their goals deserve structure, not hope. They built routines that operate even when emotions collapse. They understood that discipline is not punishment. It is protection. Protection from inconsistency. Protection from self-sabotage. Protection from the version of yourself that wants comfort over growth. When motivation dies, discipline steps in like a guard. It carries the mission forward when excitement leaves. It keeps you moving when progress is slow. It holds the line when doubt gets loud. This is why discipline decides who survives the long journey. Anyone can start strong. Few can stay. Discipline also changes identity. Repeated action rewires self-image. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. Confidence grows not from success, but from keeping promises to yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, trust is rebuilt internally. And internal trust is stronger than external validation. The disciplined person does not depend on perfect circumstances. They adapt, they adjust, they execute. They understand that waiting for ideal conditions is another form of delay. Discipline works with what is available. It turns small resources into momentum. It compounds effort quietly. Most people quit not because the goal is impossible, but because the process is uncomfortable. Discipline reframes discomfort as a signal of progress. Pain becomes data. Fatigue becomes feedback. Resistance becomes confirmation that you are no longer stagnant. Growth always demands friction. Without friction, there is no strength. Discipline is also lonely. It separates you. While others sleep, you work. While others relax, you train. While others complain, you prepare. And loneliness is often mistaken for failure. But isolation is the price of transformation. You cannot build an uncommon life while living with common habits. The disciplined path rarely looks impressive at first. There are no loud rewards, no immediate applause, just repetition, just showing up, just doing the work again and again and again. This is where most people turn back. They want proof before commitment. Discipline demands commitment before proof. The irony is that discipline creates freedom. The more disciplined you become, the more control you gain over your time, your energy, your direction. Discipline gives you options later by limiting you now. Comfort does the opposite. It feels good now and costs you later. Motivation will always fluctuate. It cannot be trusted to lead a life. Discipline can. Discipline is steady. Discipline is patient. Discipline is relentless without being emotional. It does not need praise. It does not need excitement. It only needs a decision repeated daily. This is why discipline decides who survives when motivation dies, because life will test how serious you are by removing the feelings that made starting easy. And when that happens, the only thing left standing will be the habits you built when you didn't feel like it, the structure you committed to when no one was watching, the standards you refused to lower when quitting felt reasonable. And those who train themselves to move without motivation will continue forward, while others wait for a feeling that may never return. Time is the most honest force a human being will ever face. It does not argue. It does not explain. It does not negotiate. It simply moves forward, quietly recording. Every decision, every delay, every excuse, every act of commitment. In the beginning, time feels generous. It feels endless. It feels forgiving. You believe you can afford to wait. You believe there will always be another chance, another year, another moment when you feel more ready. And time allows you to believe that lie for a while. Excuses survive only in short time frames. They sound reasonable when the clock feels distant. I'm still young. I need more information. I'll start when things calm down. I'll do it after this phase of life. Excuses feel intelligent at first. They wear logic like armor. They convince you that delay is maturity and caution is wisdom. But time has a way of stripping excuses naked. What sounds reasonable today becomes regret tomorrow. What feels justified now feels hollow later. Time does not punish excuses immediately. That is why they are so dangerous. It lets them live long enough to feel normal. It lets you repeat them until they become identity. You stop saying, I can't right now, and start saying, I'm just not that kind of person. You stop saying I'm afraid and start saying it wasn't meant for me. Time allows excuses to grow roots before it exposes their cost. Commitment works differently. Commitment looks foolish early. It looks obsessive. It looks unnecessary. People question it because they cannot see its results yet. Commitment demands consistency without applause. It demands effort without guarantees. It demands faith expressed through action. And time watches commitment closely. It does not reward it quickly, but it records it accurately. Every day you show up, time takes note. Every day you choose discipline over comfort, time adds weight to your effort. The difference between excuses and commitment is not intelligence or talent. It is endurance. Excuses need immediate relief. Commitment accepts delayed reward. Excuses protect the ego. Commitment challenges it. Excuses explain why something didn't happen. Commitment focuses on making something happen regardless of explanation. As years pass, time begins to reveal patterns. It exposes who kept preparing and who kept postponing. It exposes who was building quietly and who was talking loudly. It exposes who stayed committed when no one was watching and who needed validation to continue. Time does not care about intentions. It only responds to patterns of behavior. This is why two people can start at the same place and end up in completely different lives. One made excuses that felt small, harmless, temporary. The other made commitments that felt heavy, uncomfortable, inconvenient. Years later, the gap looks dramatic, almost unfair. But time did not change its rules. It simply compounded choices. Time rewards commitment not with luck, but with leverage. Skills sharpen, confidence deepens, decision-making improves, identity solidifies. Commitment shapes a person internally long before it changes their circumstances externally. By the time results appear, the committed individual has already become someone capable of sustaining them. Excuses delay growth because they delay exposure to reality. Commitment accelerates growth because it forces constant interaction with reality. Failure becomes feedback. Mistakes become instruction. Discomfort becomes training. Time respects this relationship. It responds to those who are willing to stay in the process long enough to learn. Many people misunderstand timing. They think success is about choosing the perfect moment. In reality, success is about choosing to commit regardless of timing. There is never a perfect season. There is only now. Time does not open doors for those who wait. It opens doors for those who knock repeatedly. As life progresses, time becomes louder. The margin for excuses shrinks. Responsibilities increase, energy changes, the cost of delay rises. What was once postponed casually now feels heavy. And this is where regret is born, not from failure, but from inactivity. Not if our own trying and losing, but from never committing fully. Commitment ages well. Excuses do not. Excuses rot under time. They lose credibility. They sound hollow when repeated for years. Commitment, on the other hand, gains strength. Even when results are slow, commitment builds internal pride. There is peace in knowing you did not quit on yourself. There is confidence in knowing you honored your effort. Time eventually removes the mask from everyone. It reveals who used their years to grow and who used their years to justify standing still. It reveals who treated time as a resource and who treated it as an enemy. It reveals who invested it and who spent it carelessly. The most painful moment in life is not when time runs out, but when time reveals the truth. When you look back and realize how often you chose comfort over commitment, how often you explained instead of executed, how often you waited instead of worked. Time does not accuse you in that moment. It simply shows you the evidence. but time also offers redemption. As long as it is still moving, commitment still works. The rules do not change with age. The price remains the same. Show up, do the work, stay consistent. Excuses lose power the moment commitment takes control. Time is neutral. It is neither cruel nor kind. It reflects back what you give it. Give it excuses and it will give you explanations. Give it commitment and it will give you results. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. And those who understand this stop asking time for mercy and start using it with intention, because they realize that time has always been fair, always honest, always ready to reward those who prove through action that they are serious enough to stay committed long after excuses stop working. Pain is unavoidable. It arrives without invitation, without warning, without concern for your plans. It enters every human life in different forms: failure, rejection, loss, disappointment, betrayal, fatigue, and it does not ask whether you are ready. The difference between people is not who suffers and who doesn't. The difference is what they allow pain to become. Pain is a teacher, but it's also a judge. It can sharpen you or scar you. It can mature you or poison you. It can turn into wisdom or harden into regret. Most people don't fear pain itself. They fear meaninglessness. They fear suffering that leads nowhere. Pain without understanding feels cruel. Pain without growth feels wasted. And when pain is not processed, it doesn't disappear. It settles. It stores itself in the body, in the mind, in behavior. It turns into bitterness, avoidance, anger, or apathy. Regret is not created by pain. Regret is created by pain that was never learned from wisdom. Requires courage. It requires the ability to look directly at what hurt you and ask difficult questions. What did this reveal about me? What did this expose in my habits? What did this teach me about people, about timing, about preparation, about ego? Pain strips illusions. It shows you where you were careless, where you were naive, where you were undisciplined, where you were dishonest with yourself. Wisdom is earned when you accept those truths without defensiveness. Regret takes the opposite path. Regret avoids reflection. It blames, it rewrites history. It says, if only they had changed, if only circumstances were different, if only life was fair. Regret preserves ego at the cost of growth. It protects the story you tell yourself while silently destroying your future options. When pain is blamed on the world, it returns stronger. Because the lesson was missed. Pain is expensive. It demands payment. Either you pay with awareness and grow, or you pay with repetition and suffer again. Life will keep sending the same lesson in different forms until it is understood. Different faces, different situations, same outcome. That is not bad luck. That is unlearned wisdom. The strongest people are not those who avoided pain, but those who converted it. They took rejection and learned discernment. They took failure and learned structure. They took loss and learned gratitude. They took humiliation and learned humility. Pain became a refining fire instead of a permanent wound. Wisdom is quiet. It does not announce itself. It shows up as better decisions, stronger boundaries, clearer priorities, patience under pressure, calm under chaos. Regret is loud. It complains. It resents. It revisits the past endlessly without extracting value from it. Wisdom moves forward carrying lessons. Regret stays stuck carrying weight. Pain tests honesty. It asks whether you are willing to admit where you were wrong, where you were unprepared, where you ignored warning signs. Wisdom begins the moment excuses end. As long as pain is explained away, it cannot teach. As long as responsibility is avoided, pain cannot transform. Many people say time heals pain. Time does not heal anything. Time only gives you space to either process or suppress. Unprocessed pain does not fade with time. It hardens. It shapes identity. It influences choices. It quietly dictates behavior. People who say they have moved on often just learned how to live around the pain without understanding it. Wisdom requires revisiting pain with intention, not to relive it emotionally, but to study it objectively, to separate feeling from fact, to extract principle from experience, to say this hurt, but it taught me something valuable. That is how pain loses its power, not by denial, but by integration. Regret grows when pain is ignored because it resurfaces later as realization. Years later, you see the pattern. You see the opportunity you wasted, the warning you dismissed, the discipline you avoided, and the pain that once could have guided you now accuses you. That is regret's voice. It speaks when action is no longer possible. In the same way, the earlier pain is faced, the lighter it becomes. The longer it is avoided, the heavier it grows. Wisdom lightens the load. Regret compounds it. One builds clarity, the other builds sorrow. Pain does not mean you are weak. It means you are alive, trying, exposed to reality. The only failure is allowing pain to pass through your life without changing you for the better. Every painful experience contains instructions. Every setback holds information. Every loss carries insight. Those Those who become wise do not waste suffering. They mine it, they study it, they use it, they allow pain to upgrade their standards, their awareness, their discipline. Those who live with regret let pain harden into memory without meaning. Life does not remove pain as a test, it uses pain as a tool. And the outcome depends entirely on whether you choose to listen or resist, whether you turn inward with honesty or outward with blame, whether you allow pain to educate you or imprison you, because in the end, pain will either elevate you into wisdom or follow you quietly as regret, shaping the rest of your life without mercy. Legacy is not something you leave behind at the end of life. It is something you build quietly every day while life is testing you. Most people misunderstand legacy because they associate it with fame, wealth, recognition, or titles. But legacy is not about how many people know your name. It is about how deeply your actions shape the space you occupy. It is about the standards you live by when no one is watching. It is about the example you become without announcing it. Life does not test people once. It tests them repeatedly in cycles with increasing weight. The first test checks enthusiasm. The second tests patience. The third tests character. The final tests endurance. Many people pass the early tests and fail the later ones. They start strong and fade quietly. They show promise and then settle. They adapt to comfort instead of committing to growth. And the moment they stop pushing back against resistance, life stops taking them seriously. Refusing to quit is not stubbornness. It is identity. It is a decision that says, I will not let temporary discomfort rewrite my long-term purpose. Quitting is rarely about the task. It is about fatigue of belief. It is about losing connection to why the journey began. It is about allowing circumstances to speak louder than conviction. The people who build legacy understand that quitting is seductive. It offers relief. It promises peace. It removes pressure, but it also removes possibility. The moment you quit, you close futures you never got to meet. You silence versions of yourself that required persistence to exist. And life remembers who walked away and who stayed in the fight. Legacy builders are not immune to doubt. They feel it deeply. They question themselves. They struggle, but they do not let doubt make decisions. They move forward while uncertain. They act without full clarity. They commit without guarantees. They understand that certainty is not a prerequisite for progress. Life tests seriousness by delaying results. It stretches timelines. It withholds validation. It creates silence after effort. This is where most people stop, not because they can't continue, but because they expected acknowledgement. They wanted confirmation that they were on the right path. Legacy is built by those who continue without applause. Quitting often disguises itself as wisdom. People say, I'm being realistic. I'm choosing balance. I'm protecting my peace. But peace without purpose becomes stagnation. Balance without growth becomes decay. Realism without vision becomes limitation. There is a difference between strategic rest and surrender. Legacy builders know when to pause and when to persist. Refusing to quit does not mean repeating the same mistakes. It means adapting without abandoning. It means learning without retreating. It means evolving while staying committed to the mission. Persistence without reflection is arrogance. Persistence with awareness is mastery. Life tests you through people, through rejection, through misunderstanding, through betrayal, through being underestimated. It watches how you respond when support disappears, when praise turns into silence, when allies become critics. Quitting in those moments feels justified. Staying feels lonely. But legacy is forged in isolation long before it is recognized in community. The strongest form of resilience is quiet consistency, not dramatic comebacks, not loud declarations, just steady action over time, showing up again, doing the work again, choosing discipline again. That kind of persistence changes identity. You stop seeing quitting as an option. You stop entertaining escape routes. You build mental endurance that outlasts circumstances. Legacy is not built in moments of comfort. It is built in seasons of resistance, when effort feels heavier, when results feel slower, when the path feels unclear. Life tests commitment by removing ease. It asks, are you here for the outcome or for the process of becoming someone capable of that outcome? Those who refuse to quit eventually outgrow the tests that once threatened them. Problems that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Obstacles that once caused fear become familiar. This is not because life gets easier, but because the person gets stronger. Legacy is also built through responsibility, through taking ownership instead of making excuses, through choosing accountability over blame, through understanding that your response to adversity writes your story more than the adversity itself. Most people want a legacy without the labor. They want the respect without the sacrifice. They want the impact without the endurance. endurance. But life does not negotiate. It demands payment upfront. It asks for consistency before results. It asks for faith before evidence. Refusing to quit does not guarantee success by external standards. It guarantees something deeper: self-respect, integrity, inner strength, a life lived without the burden of what if. Legacy is not just what others remember are about you. It is what you know about yourself when you look back and realize you did not abandon your path when it became uncomfortable. The ultimate test of life is not talent, timing, or opportunity. It is endurance. Who stayed when quitting felt reasonable, who kept going when stopping felt justified, who honored the dream when reality challenged it. Legacy belongs to those who passed that test not once, but repeatedly, through seasons of doubt, fatigue, and uncertainty, choosing again and again to stand, to continue, to evolve, to move forward without permission, because they understood that life does not reward potential, it rewards persistence, and those who refuse to quit eventually become proof that endurance outlasts every test life can offer.